Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education. Featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates.
Hi everyone, welcome to another Tutoring Tips episode of Prepped and Polished podcast. It's Anooj of Prepped and Polished. Please be sure to check out our website, www.preppedandpolished.com for more info. While you're there, sign up for our free tutoring and test prep tips newsletter. It comes out monthly. You can join our Prepped and Polished community on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Prepped and Polished. You can submit a question during the show or after to radio@preppedandpolished.com. We love hearing from you. All right, let's get right to it. So today I'm going to be talking about how to get an 800 on the SAT Math 2 subject test. So I've got 3 tips for you. The first tip is going to be studying and taking practice tests. Now, the first thing you want to do is get your hands on a Barron's or Princeton Review test prep book and start going through all the content that you feel shaky on. And when I mean going through, it just means going through all the summary, concepts, equations, things like that. You know, before all the problem sections, you'll see a little brief, here's a concept, geometry, trig, or whatever. And you just want to go right through that. And anything you're having trouble with, if you feel shaky on, just read through it. Read through it very briefly. And remember that on the math SAT subject test, the points are going to come from solving problems, not from reading, not from reciting equations, none of that. It's going to be solving problems. So go through that pretty quickly and then get into the second part of the tip, which is practice tests. Now, I studied about a month for the exam, so I started 30 days before, and I had a lot of classwork during high school, a lot of the AP classes and stuff like that. So on the weekends where I get a lot of my work done for the SAT math subject test, and when I do that, I take practice tests. And for these practice tests, what I do is before the practice test, when you're reading through a lot of the material, you want to do all the problems in there too. So, suppose I was doing a geometry section and I felt pretty comfortable on it, I would do maybe every odd problem in that section and see how I'd do. And if I felt like I needed more work, I would just do more problems in geometry. I'd start doing even ones too. So you kind of want to diagnose what you're not getting and what you're getting, but do problems in every single concept that's on the SAT math, and then get into practice tests. So on the practice test, what you want to do is take the full length test, so the full 60 minutes, and sit down, start the timer, and be very strict with yourself. You want to mimic it as close to test day as possible. The more you do that, the more feedback you're going to get on what you're lacking and what you're good at and what you're not, and it's going to help you figure out what you need to work on. I would start taking practice tests 2 to 3 weeks before the exam. Start with the Princeton Review or Barron's practice test that's in the book, and then about a week or 2 weeks before, focus in on the College Board exams. You want to buy those. Those are going to be gold because they're going to give you problems that are exactly like the ones you'll see on test day. And as you're going through these practice tests, mark the questions you're getting wrong, and I'll tell you why for tip number 2. All right, so tip number 2 is going to be diagnosing weaknesses in flashcards. Now, so I said mark those questions you're getting wrong on the practice tests. What you want to do is figure out what that means. When you're getting those types of questions wrong, was it just a fluke? Was it just a calculation error? Is it a real gap, in like a knowledge gap? You're not getting a concept? Then you need to do more problems in those sections, and you need to read more about them. And if you're still having trouble, talk to your math teacher in school, or go to preppedandpolished.com and send us an email. We can help you through that. And what you want to do is figure out all these different concepts, equations, whatever it is that's giving you trouble, and write them down on flashcards as well, and figure out the answers to them. If it's an equation you're remembering, write it down on the flashcard. If it's a concept, something that you made an error on, you keep doing it, write down the flashcard so you won't do it again. And review these flashcards every night leading up to the day of your test. Do it as often as you can, and as long as you've written it down, you're less likely to make that error or mistake again, or you're more likely to remember something. So tip number 3 is a calculator tip. Now, I mentioned equations, things like that. There's a lot of different equations being tested in the SAT 2 math. There's going to be, various trigonometry, geometry, distance from point to point, from line to point, quadratic equations. Get these equations programmed into your calculator. And the way you do this, you just kind of go on the internet, go to Google, and just type in Quadratic Formula in TI-83 or 84 calculator, and just write that program down into your calculator. It's like a step-by-step tutorial that'll teach you how to do this. Get them down in your calculator and practice using these programs. So, for example, the Quadratic Formula. You have A, you have B, you have C. You want to find out what X equals. You just plug A, B, and C into your calculator. Get really fast at this. It's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to prevent you from making calculator mistakes when you're doing it manually yourself, and kind of rely on the program to get you, but definitely have a solid understanding of the equation. So there you have it. Those are 3 tips on how to get an 800 on the SAT 2 Math. That wraps up our show, episode number 105, how to get an 800 on the SAT Math 2 subject test. Be on the lookout for our next podcast, episode number 106, our next interview guest episode. Remember to access all of our podcast episodes. Go to www.preppedandpolished.com/podcast. Thanks for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast, and go out there and take control of your own education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.